Well, old Kyle Rittenhouse was not the only was not the only guy to win a self-defense case this week. In fact, on the same day, I believe, a man by the name of Andrew Coffey IV won his self-defense case here in Florida over in Indian River County over a matter back all the way in 2017. Gosh, I mean, God, that's so long ago to only get resolution now. When he was 23, I guess, because 4 years ago he's 27 now, in which there was a SWAT raid on his house because apparently someone had complained that somebody in his home might be using drugs. And so, of course, that necessitates a SWAT raid, a no-knock raid, in which they smashed out his bedroom window and pointed a gun, through it. And he says, "Hey, I saw, or I heard my bedroom window get smashed in, and I'm asleep in bed, and I wake up and I see someone pointing a gun at me, so I fired back at them." That's what he did. And then that unleashed a hellfire of bullets from the SWAT team. When there was like a starting pistol, and so they provoked this response from Mr. Coffey, and then they filled his bedroom full of bullets. They shot his girlfriend 10 times, killing her, and then they charged him with the murder of his girlfriend. I mean, how much more brazen can these people be? Not only do the officers feel no remorse, not only did the sheriff's office not apologize for what happened, they have the gall to pin it all on the boyfriend who was just sleeping, in their bed. And yes, he's not exactly like a sterling, upstanding member of society, but that doesn't mean that that he murdered his girlfriend by defending himself. Actually, now that I think about it, this kind of sounds like the whole Breonna Taylor case, although I feel like there was I don't want to comment on that because I think more came out about that, and I'm less I'm conflicted on that one. Although I'd have to look into it more, so I don't want to comment on that. But just like detail-wise, offhand, sounds kind of similar. Cops show up at the house, boyfriend fires, claiming self-defense, and the girlfriend gets killed. Somehow the boyfriend is unscathed, but it's not like he is the one who shot her. That there's no dispute about that. I mean, they all recognize that the 10 bullet holes which perforated this 21-year-old woman all were fired by the police. Now, he was convicted, before I go forward, he was convicted on one count of, a felon possessing a gun, which frankly should not be a crime, and apparently the maximum sentence for that is 30 years. So essentially they can put him away for murder anyway, if they want to. If the judge thinks he's guilty, he'll say, well, even though we couldn't get you on actual murder charges, I can put you away for 30 years on this gun charge, and so I'll do that because I think you're a murderer. And so the unfortunate thing is here is the jury would have been instructed, hey, even if you think that, what this guy did was justified, you have to, vote for guilt on this gun charge because, he is a felon and he was in possession of a gun. We all agree on that, so obviously he's guilty. And that gives the state then, gets their foot in the door so that they can then put him away for up to 30 years. But if I were on that jury, I would have informed my fellow jurors, hey, if we think that he did the right thing, if we think that, him defending himself and his girlfriend when somebody smashed their window and pointed a gun at them, if we think that's justified, we could just nullify the gun charge. We don't have to convict him. Juries do not have to convict. They can choose not to. Now, they can't... even if the person is technically guilty under the law, you can vote to acquit. What you can't do is vote someone guilty. You can't convict someone who is not in violation of the law. You can't do that explicitly. Now, do people do that? Yeah. Juries do that all the time. But my point is, it is legal. Everyone recognizes this, even though the lawyers and judges don't want you to know this. But even if you agree that under the law, And the facts of the case, this person did break the law. If you don't want to convict them, you don't have to. And so, obviously, I think the jurors recognize that this guy was acting in self-defense. And if that's the case, they should give him a pass on the, felon gun charge, because they should know that the state is going to ultimately get, through sentencing, the outcome that they wanted anyway. I guess they're not going to get the death penalty for him, but I mean, even if they did convict him on murder, the death penalty would be absurd in this case, considering he's not the one who shot her. The cops did, and the cops were cleared of all wrongdoing, and they weren't even indicted for any crimes. But anyway, getting back to the arrogance of the state and the fact that they think that operating this way is okay, and that not only is it okay what the state did, that they can try and take out they can pin all the consequences of their actions on this guy who is, again, doesn't seem like a super savory fellow. I guess he's got 4 felony convictions by the age of 23. That seems like quite a bit. Although I didn't look at what those felonies were. I mean, maybe they were all felony drug possession somehow. I guess that's possible. If that's the case, then, there's nothing wrong with this guy. But assuming that one or more of those 4 felonies was actually a real crime, and again, I'm not saying that this guy is a Boy Scout. He's not Kyle Rittenhouse, okay? Kyle Rittenhouse was not literally a Boy Scout, but I mean, he was figuratively what you'd call a Boy Scout. But you don't have to be a Boy Scout to have a right to self-defense. Everybody has that. And maybe, the cocksuckers of the world, of which there are less and less every day, thankfully, should think, hey, cocksuckers generally agree that, self-defense is a right, and they believe in the Second Amendment and all this stuff. The Blue Lives Matter folks, people who have those bumper stickers on their car, they're usually not averse to gun rights. And so given that, maybe I think it would be too hard to convince these people that the police that they love so much should not be putting themselves in a position where they provoke people to shoot at them. See what I'm saying here? When you have a no-knock raid, to the person on the other side of that door who didn't receive a knock, it's no different than breaking and entering. And you don't have time to assess every time somebody breaks into your house. Okay, let me look. I'll have to ask this guy for his badge. And then and if I ask him for his badge and he doesn't have one, well, then I can assume that he's a burglar, and I can draw my weapon and defend myself. No, you don't have time to do that. You don't have time to ask the guys breaking down your door, pointing a gun in your face, hey, what's your badge number? Can I film this? No, that's not going to work, because if you're going to get yourself killed that way. When somebody breaks down your door, you don't even have time to wait to look if they have a gun, but especially if you see that they have a gun, and you have got a weapon nearby, you need to draw it and shoot to defend yourself in your own home. Again, it's not like Andrew Coffey was breaking into a cop's house and got himself shot or something, or shot at the guy. No, the cops were breaking into his house in the middle of the night, dressed in all black, like burglars. And I saw a picture of the guy's house. Doesn't look very nice, so I don't want to assume too much, but it wouldn't be crazy. It wouldn't be surprising to me if his home is in a high crime area where people break and enter into homes and steal things. And obviously, just because he was a convicted felon in the past, if they let him out of jail, they obviously think that he's not too much of a threat to society. And if you're, and so, in my opinion, if these people who you say, oh, they can't have guns because they're dangerous felons, well, if they're that bad, they should be in jail. And if they're not that bad, there's no reason why they can't own a gun. Because that's kind of a normal part of, living your life, especially if you live in a rough area, like convicted felons want to do, because they're kind of poor. It's not very easy to get a decent job if you're a felon. That's a major red flag. That's an easy way for employers to weed out people who are, seeking a job. If you've got a stack of 5 resumes and 2 of them are felons, okay, throw out those 2 and look at the other 3. And so once you are convicted of a felony, you are in a way condemned to live in these high crime areas where you will need to possess a firearm to protect yourself. And then if you do so, the state will come and say, okay, sure, you were defending yourself, but you weren't allowed to own that gun. You weren't allowed to defend yourself. And so even though you're alive now and you would have otherwise been dead, we're going to put you away in prison for the rest of your life. And sadly, the tough on crime stuff plays very well here. So I have no illusions about this kind of stuff getting better. Unfortunately, people are much more open to the idea of felons voting than of felons owning guns, even though owning a gun is a fundamental right and voting is not. Voting is a privilege created by the state. You only have the only reason why anybody has the ability to vote is because that just happens to be how our government is set up. If we had a different type of government, where, like they did for thousands of years of human history, where people didn't vote, none of us would be able to vote, but you'd still have the right to defend yourself. You would still have a right to bear arms. And, you would have that right unless the government actively tried to take it away from you. But the government doesn't have to take away your right to vote because, the government gives you your right to vote. That's actually a right that comes from government, if you want to call it a right at all. I don't like that language. But, the point is, without the government, there would be no need to vote. There would be nothing to vote about. We're voting because the government exists. But I don't want to get too off in the weeds. Anyway, this guy, I'm glad that he's not convicted of murder, but again, the end result is not going to be all that different for him. Unless he ended up with, I guess, a very fair judge, but I doubt that. But it's not like the, what was it? Was it Kaepernick or was it Bubba Wallace? I think it was Bubba Wallace or Bubba Watson, whatever his name is. The Bubba Smollett character, the guy who lied about there being a noose in his bay at some NASCAR race, and it ended up being the pull cord to pull the door down. That guy, in response to the Rittenhouse verdict, said, well, if he was black, it would have been life in prison, or it would have been all guilty, or something like that. Well, here we have another example of a less favorable case, I think, where there's no video evidence. It's just it's a he said, she said of the defendant versus the cops, and the black guy gets acquitted on all counts except for the felony possession of a firearm thing. But Kyle wasn't a felon, so he wasn't charged with that either. He was charged with a gun-related possession charge, but that was frivolous. It was based on the idea that he was carrying a short-barreled rifle, which he obviously wasn't, and when this was brought up in court, the state said, well, the defense didn't do anything to disprove, or to prove that it was not a short-barreled rifle, which is absurd on its face, and so that charge was thrown out. And so Andrew Coffey here, if it wasn't for his felony conviction, he would have gotten off on everything. His prior felony convictions, I should say. He would have gotten off on everything with no jail time, would have been a free man, just like Rittenhouse. Now, I am a bit concerned, though, that it got this far because his stand your ground motion, which is a pretrial thing, that's not a defense that you bring up in court. That's something you bring up before trial to say, hey, this whole charge is that you can't even try me for this because I was because of stand your ground. That was not upheld or overruled or whatever you want to call it. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the language. It does concern me that someone was denied a stand your ground motion when they were in their own home and somebody pointed a gun at them. But hey, this is why your local sheriff's race is so important. And unfortunately, the guys who tend to win those races are tough on crime stuff. That's what sheriff's elections are about. Are like, I'm tough on crime, and the other guy goes, no, I'm even tougher on crime. Nobody ever runs for sheriff saying, you know what, I'm gonna when the SWAT team raids your house, I'm gonna have them knock on the door. Nobody ever runs that way. Now, if they would I vote for them? Sure. But unfortunately, it's just, we need better people running for sheriff because the Indian River County Sheriff is absolutely indignant. Even in the face of the jury's verdict, he is, and he had the gall to say, oh, I feel so bad for the family of this guy's girlfriend who was killed, that they didn't receive justice today, and that the murderer wasn't convicted. And meanwhile, the families, the girl's family, in reality, in Realville, is suing the sheriff civilly, because of course the sheriff's office and the deputies weren't even indicted, and so there is no criminal proceedings there. And so the mother of this girl, who wants justice for the death of her daughter, who is she going after? Is she going after Andrew Coffey IV, the murderer who supposedly just got off scot-free after killing her daughter? No, she's going after the sheriff's office. I wonder why that is. But hey, it's still a good sign that an Indian River County jury acquitted this guy, and it really debunks the. I guess if you really thought that the racial component was a big determinant here, this is not good evidence for that case, because Indian River County is very conservative. Although, who knows? I don't know. Maybe this was maybe they did a good job on jury selection, and like half the jurors were black or something. I don't know exactly. I have not looked at. I don't know what the characteristics of this jury was, so I shouldn't speak to it too much, just based on the generalities of the county. But if you got a random jury from Indian River County, I think they're going to be very sympathetic towards the tough on crime stance, and not very sympathetic to a four-time convicted felon who shot at cops during a drug raid. But really, I mean, what should be happening as a result of this case is that the sheriff's office should be made to reconcile with the results of their actions, and they would have to look at, what, just because we got a call from somebody saying that there were people who had drugs in this house, maybe our response, which directly led to the death of this woman, maybe that was a little extreme. Maybe we should have just knocked on their door. Maybe we should have just executed a normal search warrant, where a cop knocks on your door and says, hey, I have a search warrant. I would like to come in. And at that point, if the guys draw guns on you, then you're justified in, pumping them full of lead. But if you show a search warrant and they let you in, and you find your evidence or whatever, and you arrest them for that. But this, the SWAT raids are beyond parody. I mean, the fact that swatting as a prank thing is real, that is something that you can do that easily, should have been evidence enough for anyone in America that the whole SWAT team thing has gone way too far. I mean, it's obvious that all these SWAT raids are just make-work projects, because they've got these SWAT team guys sitting around, and they want, an excuse to go use all their training that they got. They want to use all these fancy toys like their flashbangs and their long rifles. If you're a normal beat cop, you don't walk around with a rifle all day. And for a lot of these guys, hey, it might be fun to strap on your helmet and put on a full plate carrier, not just soft body armor, and do do your tack reloads. You got a bunch of operators in every sheriff's office and police department around the country, and what do they want to do? They want to conduct some operations, and so that's the real issue here, and it's not getting addressed. So, I like to end these episodes on a high note. I rarely do. So why should today be any different? I will see you folks back here tomorrow.